Welcome to Bio 2024. We're live on the floor, and I'm very pleased to be speaking to Joe Panetta. With the continuing pressure being placed upon the biopharma sector from Washington, how is the California biotech ecosystem, arguably the globe's leading hub for innovative biotech, responding? Joseph Panetta is president and CEO of Biocom, the San Diego, California organization leading 1,800 companies, service sector firms, universities, and research institutes working in the biotechnology sector. Joe's been the head of Biocom since 1999 and is universally regarded as one of the world's biotech thought leaders. Joe, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm great because Bio's back in San Diego. I think it was when I began at Biocom, then Biocom San Diego, back in 1999. One of my first charges was to put together the first Bio convention San Diego with folks at Bio, which was Bio 2001. We began the planning then. So 25 years, and here we are.
And Joe, you've recently made an announcement you're going to be stepping down from the day-to-day of Biocom. I mean, that's a big move. Congratulations, I guess. I should say congrats.
You know, I feel good about it. I said about 2 years ago, when I reach 25 years, it'll be time to hand the torch to someone else. Not that I'm tired, not that I've lost my passion. It's just only fair that we bring in new leadership with new ideas. And so here I am, and I'm just glad for what we've been able to accomplish. I'm glad for partnerships like the one we have.
Thank you.
You know, I'm looking forward to staying around and probably focusing more on our global strategy at Biocom California to introduce our companies to more companies in key biotech markets around the world.
So when we met last year at the Bio Conference in Boston, they just made the announcement on IRA. Yep. Now we're here today. We've just had the maximum fair price negotiations start. The companies have been given their initial confidential negotiation starting points. What do you think's been the impact upon your members?
I think from the conversations that I've had and from the panel presentations that I've listened to over the last year, one of the things that I said when this passed is pretty much what I'm beginning to see as the impact on our members. And you've got impact at two different levels. So let's begin with the pharma companies who are seeing this, you know, direct impact from CMS on the prices of their drugs. We all know these are businesses. Sure, people go to work every day in those businesses because they're passionate about developing therapies and cures for patients. But in the end, there's a bottom line. And the bottom line is driven by financial people within the organization. So, you know, when Congress says that one category of drugs, biologics, is going to get 13 years of exclusivity, another category, small molecules, is going to get 9 years of exclusivity, the people who do the financials say, well, wait a minute, we're not going to have as much time to recover our investment in small molecules as we are in large molecules. So let's focus on doing large molecules instead of small molecules. There's a big difference between small molecules and large molecules. You know, the biological drugs are in many cases the ones that treat rare diseases, cancers, and they're administered in outpatient settings or the hospital. Small molecules, in many cases, are injections or drugs. They're two entirely different categories. But what's happened, the impact is it's driving the decision-making away from small molecules to large molecules. That's having an impact on small companies, too. If you're a small company in life science and you're focusing on certain categories that don't have as much of a potential return on investment or small molecules, you're not going to get the financing. And you know, it's not as though one category is better or worse than the other category. They're equal in their ability to impact patient health. So, you know, that's what we're beginning to see, and it's unfortunate.
But it's a tool for they're not the same tool. They're in the same toolbox, but they have a different application.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating about that, Joe, we talked about this last year. I mean, one of the recent Nobel Prize winners here is a San Diego company in medicinal chemistry, old school small molecules, and now we're completely disincentivizing those.
Yeah. 25 years I've been doing this, and I continually want to bang my head against a wall about the lack of appreciation by the bureaucrats and the politicians of what they do when they implement these kinds of policies. And we see it time and time again. When we try to dilute down the cost of healthcare, and instead, we force the equation in a different direction where it goes up in certain areas. It's unfortunate, and I think my former boss used to say that politicians could be incredibly cynical, and cynical because they only appreciate the cost of something and not the value of it. So, I think it's a difficult challenge that we've got. These things keep coming up over and over again. There's lack of appreciation for the impact.
A couple months ago on March 4th in Biospace, the trade journal, a Pfizer, pretty high up member of Pfizer, mentioned that they're going to switch their mix of small molecules to large molecules from 90% plus for small molecules in oncology to large molecules specifically because of IRA.
Yeah.
What do you think happens? How does the world change, the world you live in, if all of a sudden we're disincentivizing Medicare-based applications to only allowing companies to make a profit on large molecules? What's going to happen?
Well, first of all, Medicare costs are going to go up, right?
Of course.
Secondly, a lot of those drugs, the small molecule drugs, are the ones that eventually become generic drugs, where the price of that class of generic drug comes down significantly. We're not going to have that happen anymore.
Yeah, there's a less tractability. I mean, the biologics do come down, but they're stickier for a longer curve.
Absolutely. So again, I just keep asking myself, what were these people thinking? They were thinking about short-term political gain more than anything.
And it fits on a bumper sticker.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So another thing that's occurred, PitchBook, the really good internet-based analytics company for finance that does a lot in biotech, they made a comment last year that, almost 40% of VCs stopped trading in 2023. I mean, that's a staggering number, 2 out of 5, basically just shutting down or stopping trading. We're in the heart of San Diego. I mean, this is biotech central. The industry in many ways started here. Are you seeing any resurgence in 2024, or is it still down?
I think we're beginning to see a resurgence. I was actually just with our partners at Fisher Scientific for lunch, and I see them as kind of a bellwether when it comes to this question, right? Because, you see their sales going up when you see the investment beginning to come back. And last year, their sales dropped significantly. Part of it was because of overstock, but part of it was because 2023 was just a bad year, right? We saw our membership retention drop from its typical 90% or so down to less than 85% retention last year.
Wow.
We lost a record number of members last year. Now, the good news for us as an organization, and I think for the industry, was we also saw a lot of new company formation. And so we made up for a lot of that with new members that we brought on. But last year was a bad year. But on the positive side, the statistics that I've seen have shown us that if we look at the first quarter of 2024 versus the first quarter of 2023, in California, we saw about a $1.1 billion increase in venture capital investment in companies here. So it looks like it's beginning to pick up. And when I talk about our partners at Fisher, they also see that their sales began to pick up. So R&D is picking up. The other big impact that I think about all the time is a lot of people have been laid off.
Yeah.
Fortunately for the most part, I think from what I've heard, they've found jobs. But the layoffs are having a significant impact.
Are you seeing any impacts that diverge between San Diego and the South Bay and San Francisco, or is it pretty much ubiquitous across the whole state?
I think it's pretty much ubiquitous. Maybe not so much in Los Angeles, because that's still kind of a fledgling kind of a biotech cluster up there. And, we're still seeing venture investment in jobs and things. But in the Bay Area, the one indicator that I see, especially in South San Francisco, is they've got millions of square feet of empty real estate.
Yeah, horrendous.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what the number is exactly, but it is tremendous.
Yes, and we're also seeing Not just that, we're also seeing, there's office leasing space, there's outsourcing, there's, lab outsourcing. Those numbers are down, as you mentioned, Fisher Scientific. I mean, there's just a ton of liquidity that's on the table that is not being exploited. It's really tough.
Yeah. I'm forever the optimist and have been, because I know that, and we both know that this passion, this challenge of drug development is a long-term process,
right?
And those who invest in it cannot just sit on the sidelines forever. Otherwise, what they seek to try to accomplish is never going to happen. So, right now we've still got high inflation. The Fed hasn't brought interest rates down. The markets have been all over the place, right? I haven't checked to see where we are today. But, the Biden administration was crowing a couple of weeks ago that the Dow hit 4,000. A few days ago, it was down around 3,800 again, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty still, I think.
And there's still, every 6 months, we're pumping another $1 trillion of liquidity in the market. So these are systemic problems that probably are not going to correct in the short term.
Not in the short term, And then, of course, as everybody says, and it's an election year, right? Whatever that means, and it's an election year.
Well, it means that there's probably not going to be anything substantive to occur.
Yeah.
So, again, speaking of the election year, one of the things that's happened with the Biden administration, under the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, they've released a new plan, a draft interagency guidance framework for the use of March-in rights. Now, these are exploited patents that have been funded by the government under Bayh-Dole, and now they're trying to say that if anything's been funded by the federal government, we're going to be able to march in and give that off to be produced by someone else to lower prices. Now, we did some work sponsored by Bio, and we looked at over 350 of the drugs that had been invented over the last 10 years, type 1 FDA approvals. And we found that of those 350, there were only 5 where you could actually have all the patents that were funded by the government. So it was really 1.5% of all drugs that could theoretically be marched in on. And of those 5, there's really only one that has any value, and that's Xtandi, which everyone's been talking about, and that's had all the petitions on it. So there's no mystery here. I guess it was quite shocking to us that the number was so low. Was it a surprise to you that it's only 5 drugs that can be marched in on?
Yes and no. I mean, again, goes back to what we were just discussing about the Inflation Reduction Act. What are these people thinking? First of all, we both remember the impact, I think, that Bayh-Dole had on investment in innovation. Right?
Wall Street Journal called it one of the 3 most important pieces of legislation ever passed.
Right. All of a sudden, the chains were loose. Academia, research institutes could generate a return on intellectual property. Companies could buy this intellectual property and take on this intellectual property. It in a lot of ways, it created the biotech industry, especially in California, right? So, again, for political gain to turn around and say, well, and wrongly so, and congratulations on the great work you guys did.
Thank you, Joe.
All of these drugs were developed by NIH, or they were all created by NIH. So, we're just going to go in and take them back, right? What are you thinking? Well, you're thinking, first of all, that you're going to get political mileage out of doing this. But secondly, to your point, 5 drugs, good luck with that, right? But it sends a bad signal is the problem.
My fear is that given everything is so politicized now on this issue in healthcare, and it just seems like everything is just to try and drive electoral votes coming in November. My fear is they're just going to march in on Xtandi anyway. They'll just do it. Sure, it'll get turned over, but who cares? I think they'll just do it for electoral, leverage.
Yeah. And it's a shame because, and I agree with you, they might just do that. And it's a shame because, again, political gain will trump the innovative work that's being done by this industry because of the fact that we were protected up to now. And, sometimes I say to myself, why is it that the government isn't developing drugs? Because there's no way they could possibly do that and take that risk and make that investment. So they'd rather turn around and pick on us instead.
And again, it fits on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because there have been several academics that have basically built castles on this issue for 10 years, been going around testifying in Congress that we need to do this. And yet, when the rubber hits the road and you actually analyzed all these patents, and, Gwen O'Loughlin from our team led this research effort with the University of Wisconsin Law Library with a tool called the Lens that's relatively new, where you could actually search for that government interest statement. It's the first time you could do that. And what's intriguing is there's just no there there. Why do you think, or how do you think the academics got this so wrong? Leading question of the day.
I want to be careful about the way I say this because I love the academics, and we've got some great Biocom California members in academia, but I think academia needs to stick to doing research and science, and not so much to get involved in the policy of the drug development business and the impact that something like this could have on companies.
Are those academics getting to you? Are you hearing? Obviously, they're probably not going to want to be public about this, but that's part of the reason why they joined Biocom, so you can be public about this issue.
We're not hearing much from them.
No kidding.
No, but I'll tell you what I am hearing, not so much directly, but just anecdotally, there are a lot of folks at NIH who aren't real in favor of this.
Oh, I can imagine.
Right.
Well, because they tried it under CRADA grants, they put in fair pricing clauses, and the CRADA grants literally cratered.
And that's what they remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
They absolutely dropped.
So, you look at who's going to go after SBIR grants.
Not if there's liability there.
No. And that's, our friends at NCI, for example, we work closely with them. I mean, that's what they do. So you're gonna say to people, well, no, don't go work with NIH because there's a possibility the government's just going to come in and take it away from you.
You've got two leading research institutes, Scripps, UCSD. I mean, we could walk there from where we are right now to both institutions, okay?
A long walk, but
we could do it. Yeah. Sure. It would be a nice day. We'd wear a hat, drink some fluids. Yeah. But, here's the thing. What happens if they do this? I mean, what really happens?
So what really happens is that Scripps and Salk and some of the other research institutes then begin to suffer even more. They've suffered a lot already because the funding that they depend upon is largely grant funding that comes out of the federal government. And so that's dropped significantly. So, then, and also they're dependent upon being able to take what they develop and then partner through tech transfer with the industry to have these products developed, right? I think it's just, almost like a nail in the coffin to the research institutes.
Will the companies still work with academia but avoid NIH exposure? Is that where you think this goes?
I think so. Or, the companies will just do it themselves.
Yeah, like they did before Bayh-Dole.
Yeah, and what they did before Bayh-Dole was to have stables of hundreds of research chemists, right? We've got this little thing called AI that's coming along, right? And that the opportunity to take advantage of that tool to do more efficient early stage drug discovery is probably something companies are going to take advantage of.
We've been asked to look at some of the movement of technology, particularly in hard areas like neurology, where we see, 95, 98%, in case of Alzheimer's, 99% failure rates. We were asked to look if we'd seen any movement of R&D portfolios of that stuff to Asia, China specifically. We looked at amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, and we saw a 10-fold increase in research in China in Lou Gehrig's disease. Do you see this acceleration of stuff moving to China mostly for economic concerns if we keep putting up barriers here?
Yes, and here's what I see happening. And I started going to China back in 2009 for Biocom California to look at the opportunity actually to partner more with Chinese companies and to work with companies like Wuxi, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not allowed to say that.
Right.
I think.
It was just kind of getting off the ground then, but that was one of the reasons that I went. But between 2009 and 2013, I spent a lot of time in China. And what I saw was a shift. a huge shift, with the government, of course, involved in it. And that was away from the traditional generics production that the Chinese were known for, to the building of facilities to do innovative development of therapeutics, and to the development of teams at their Chinese FDA that were engaged with the industry in understanding novel drug development, right? So, the Chinese have been investing in this now for 15 years. They know what they're doing. They know that they need to move to innovative drug development, not only because it's an opportunity to access more world markets, but they've got 1.4 billion people in China.
And the old joke is, even if you're 1 in a million person, there's 1,000 people just like you.
That's exactly. That's the thing they tell me in China all the time.
Yeah.
So, the Chinese, I know from Chinese companies that we see here in San Diego, they're eager to acquire early stage biotech companies that are doing some of this work. I say all the time, just watch out for the Chinese, because it's not just about what's happening under the Biosecure Act concerns about intellectual property. They're very aggressively creating a biotech industry, an innovative biotech industry in China.
The other thing you see is, traditionally we've had a pipeline in the U.S. where people come from China, they come from Asia, they come from India. They move to the U.S., they get their H-1 visa, and they stay here, and then they become employees of many of your members. Right. We're seeing more of them go back now and set up companies in China. So headcount and competition for headcount is becoming a real problem. Are you hearing your members say this as well, that they're very concerned about sort of a brain drain, a reverse brain drain happening?
Yeah. I mean, I think our larger companies are seeing that, because a lot of this talent is talent that they utilize at the larger companies. Again, it's not just China; it's India, as well. Those are probably the main two. But just on a broader level, this is why it's important for our politicians to understand that we in California, we in the United States, cannot take this industry for granted. Maybe for years we could, but when I do our international work now, I see the aggressiveness of our friends in Korea.
Yeah.
And you take a company, one of our great members, Samsung Biologics, has hired people from here to come in and to help them to move from generics manufacturing of biologics to innovative drug development, right? We see the Koreans saying to us, how can we send our companies to California so that they can have a base in California? The Indians, I went to India a couple of years ago and just marveled at the sophistication of their contract manufacturing facilities over there. It's something that we can't take for granted anymore here.
So we've mentioned that we're coming into an election.
Yep.
What do you think is going to happen? Because obviously we have two choices. The Biden administration has been extremely hostile, but people forget, so was the Trump administration before Biden. Most favored nations there's an injunction against most favored nations. The Trump administration in May of 2023 said we are going to immediately open this up again. So where do you think this ends up, Joe?
So, one thing's for certain, one of these two is going to win the election, right?
Yes.
And I'm glad you put it the way you put it, because I can't forecast what's going to happen. All that I can say is you're right. Anyone who says, well, if the Biden administration is gone, the Republicans come in, and Republicans are typically friendly to us. No, we saw what happened under Trump, right? And I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is that while our Republican delegation in the House stood up for us when it came to the IRA and the drug pricing in the IRA, we saw in the Senate, and I think we'll continue to see, that there's a faction of Republicans in the Senate that think that we need to fix the drug pricing process even more, and in the House as well. So go back to march-in rights. I think that's gone if Trump wins. I don't think we're dealing with the government saying we're gonna march in and I think that's something that's appreciated.
Or even beyond that, 1498. I mean, the Biden administration is saying we're just going to start confiscating patents wholesale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope that goes away because that's extremely aggressive and would be detrimental.
Yeah.
Horrible. And anything else then do you think that would occur that would be positive?
I'm
trying to put a nice spin on this, Joe.
Yeah. I just think that we've got an opportunity, whoever's there, whoever's there, we've got an opportunity to tell our story better, right? And I was very pleased to listen to John Crowley yesterday to talk about his plans for bio and his passion about telling the biotech industry story more. And so whoever comes back in, whoever's in, I guess whoever comes back in is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I think that we've got an opportunity with new leadership at Bio to go in and tell the story in a different way from someone who's lived it and has run a biotech company and has developed drugs for his own children and is really passionate about telling this story. And we just got to keep doing it. I've been doing it for 25 years in this job. I think what I see, the gratification there is that we do create some relationships with politicians who actually end up understanding the value and who stand up for us. And that's what we have to do. We're not going to change an entire, side of the aisle, but the more we can develop relationships with members who understand the value of what we do and will stand up for us, that's how we're going to move ahead.
Well, Joe, your legacy for that moving ahead is what you see here today. 20,000 people here? I mean, you have been part of building this. It's been wonderful working with you. And it's a shame you're going, but I wish you all success in your semi-retirement, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other.
Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, I hope you'll ask me back, even though I'm semi-retired.
Well, I'm sure we can work that out. Joe, it's always a pleasure, man. Great to see you.
Yeah.
The executive producer of the Vital Health Podcast is Dwayne Schultes. Our editor is Mark Brodeen. Our project manager is Gwen O'Laughlin. The Vital Health Podcast is a production of Vital Transformation, LLC, copyright 2024.